Coming in at number 10 is Injustice. Some of the best Superman stories have to deal with the Man of Steel going to the dark side. Ultraman, Superboy Prime, Superman Red Sun, all fantastic takes on the character, but, and this is an arguable point, the darkest and most shocking of these is Injustice. Sure, Injustice is based off the Mortal Kombat-like video game, but it's just dark from the get-go. Thanks to the Joker, Superman is tricked into taking the life of both Lois Lane and their future. He then plunges his hand straight through the Joker's chest, just cementing the fact that he has gone overboard. But if that weren't enough, it's the way he dispatches the heroes who used to be his friends that will really get you. Burning Martian Manhunter alive and using his heat vision on Shazam's eyeballs are just two of the worst ones for me. Number 9. Frank Miller's work. Frank Miller wrote the groundbreaking comic The Dark Knight Returns in 1986, and it was truly something. While it was dark, it just offered up an amazing story and some crazy awesome scenes that people never knew they wanted. But it hurts a lot to say that its success unfortunately led to sequels. These sequels dropped in quality, both in storytelling and especially in art, but they ramped up the insanity. We had a Robin who had been completely neglected by Batman and went absolutely insane, and in another moment Wonder Woman and Superman end countless lives while they do the deed. Now, there is nothing wrong with superheroes becoming romantically involved. It happens all the time, but to have Superman, with his strong moral code, decide that he is going to fly around, crash landing into populated areas, causing earthquakes, hurricanes, and the evacuation of Hawaii, all while wrapped up with Wonder Woman, it's just dumb and really messed up. Number 8. Superboy Prime and Mr. Mxyzptlk. I usually pounce on any opportunity to talk about Mr. Mxyzptlk, but what happened in Countdown to Final Crisis between him and Superboy Prime? It just ain't it. Honestly, a lot of this 52-issue series is extremely dark. There are lots of lost lives and destruction signifying nothing and mostly ultimately ignored by the Final Crisis. But in Countdown to Final Crisis number 23, Superboy Prime abducts the 5th dimensional imp and takes him back to the source wall. Here, Superboy Prime uses an unreasonable amount of force on Mr. Mxyzptlk to find his home. When Mr. Mxyzptlk refuses, Superboy Prime uses his laser eyes to carve the Superman symbol into the poor imp's face. If you guys are enjoying this video so far, make sure to drop a like. That's all you gotta do to show us that we don't suck. Okay.
Number 7. Iron Man. Written by Bob Layton and David McKelvey, we see of course an older Tony Stark explaining that he spent 50 years building Stark Universal into the global juggernaut that it is today. That's 50 years of battling bombs, bullies, and buyouts, only to have a more subtle enemy slip through my defense when I wasn't looking. Time! Yeah, so Tony at this point is looking for a suitable replacement for his tech and eventually for Iron Man. And he finds this in a young scientist named Nick Travis. But an Iron Man story feels almost incomplete without another big bad metal suit going against Tony, and this time in the form of Ultra Dynamo. The comic touches on Tony's declining health, and for a one-shot it's actually a pretty decent send-off. A little bit different than how he went off in the MCU. A little less sad, I think. Number 6. Wolverine. We love to see an aging, dying Wolverine. I mean, Logan was one of the best superhero movies I'd seen in a very long time, and the R rating just needs to happen for some of these stories to be told, or at least have them told properly. So in Wolverine the End, we again see an aged Wolverine as he embarks to take down the last of the Weapon X program. All the while, he's dealing with himself becoming less and less immortal. So this 6-parter is a lovely time. It opens up with Wolverine in the snowy landscapes of Canada, struggling to even hunt a deer. A deer! And then he reminds himself how old he's getting, because as he tries to pull his claws back in, it pains him more and more. That's not a good sign. The voice in Wolverine's head does a lot of heavy lifting for the narrative, and watching this struggle is sad yet weirdly poetic. And on top of his personal problem, he has to deal with his long lost dead brother in order to save America from a nuclear fallout. Fans have expressed how the final antagonist was a bit over the top in a story like this, but the soul-searching Logan must-do makes it worth the read after all. Number 5. Marvel's The End. Of course, this 6-part series written by Jim Starlin is full of cosmic chaos. The heart of the universe, first discovered by the Celestial Order, brought peace, of course, to the universe. They picked the ancient Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaton as their agent on Earth. Now, this power eventually started to corrupt him, and then he travels to present-day Earth to kill most of Earth's mightiest heroes. So Dr. Doom's like, whoa, no thank you, and then goes back in time to try and kill him while he was still a human, before all that jazz. Which is a great idea. I mean, like Rhodes recommended in Endgame, the whole plan for Thanos. But it of course doesn't go as planned. They can't just do that. So Akhenaton doesn't let this happen. Thanos has now entered the chat. The Great Titan becomes aware of this power. He gets together with the remaining heroes like Captain Marvel and the Defenders, and then Thanos destroys the machine that allows the Order to use the Heart's power. So where does this power now go to? That's right, you guessed it, right into Thanos. So Thanos uses his newfound power to go back in time to take down the Order before they found the heart of the universe. And on top of that, also prevent Dr. Doom from killing his past self. And to make matters worse, the Living Tribunal gathered a bunch of, cosmic beings like Eternity, Infinity, Death, Galactus, and the Celestials to stop Thanos. Number 4, Punisher. Written by Garth Ennis, this 2004 one-shot features a lot of F-bombs, like holy and takes place, of course, in a post-apocalyptic future, with the time being referred to as simply soon. So this is soon. Awesome, lovely, thank you for the heads up. So we open up in Sing Sing prison. During a nuclear fallout, Frank Castle has been in the prison for years. He's laying low in the fallout shelter in the prison with some other prisoners until he decides he's had enough, breaks out, and then heads to New York City. He brings along with him Paris Peters. He's an arsonist, which is a perfect sidekick, and they head to New York just traveling through radiation and remains of buildings. It truly does look and feel like the end. So they find the Manhattan bomb shelter and they get in, but they quickly pass out. Why? Well, because that radiation they ignored, it starts to finally kick in and cause effect. They wake up in an infirmary with doctors explaining how they're gonna die within the coming hours, and then Frank of course kills them all brutally, and then goes on to discover a boardroom with the Coven, who he found out about during his time at Sing Sing. So the Coven is a group of generals, senators, billionaires, anyone important, basically the people in power responsible for escalating the war just for profit gains. So with twists and turns about who they really are, Frank will face the biggest challenge of his life, all while against the ticking fatal clock.
Number 3, The Killing Joke. The Killing Joke is one of DC's most groundbreaking Joker stories, but it is a Joker story, which means it is going to be messed up. In an effort to break Commissioner Gordon to prove his point that all it takes to make someone bad is one bad day, the Joker breaks loose from Arkham Asylum and attacks Barbara Gordon, the Commissioner's daughter, and who also happened to be Batgirl. The attack itself was incredibly visceral and it left Barbara paralyzed, but the worst part came later. When after kidnapping the Commissioner, Joker showed him pictures that he took of Barbara, scantily clad and implying a hell of a lot. While this book was incredible in a lot of ways, the writer, Alan Moore, says that this is one part he kind of regrets, and he places some of the blame on DC editorial, who encouraged and okayed him to go so far. Number 2, Bialia. If we are talking dark moments, there are 2 DC characters that always come to the forefront of my mind. The Joker is obviously one, he's already showed up multiple times on this list, but the other would be Black Adam. Black Adam does not give a damn. The only things he has shown to care about are him, his family, and his country. He has ripped someone in half as a warning to not mess with Kahndaq, he has obliterated Psycho Pirate's face for manipulating his mind, and he took on the entire superhuman community in the World War III event. But the whole catalyst for that last one was because he completely decimated the entire innocent population of the country of Bialia. And all because a group of villains had taken his family from him and he could not find them. It was only when he decided to try and head to another country that the World War III events started. And in at number 1 is Dr. Light. Okay, this one is kind of really hard to talk about. We are dealing with really mature subject matter, and it was handled in an incredibly bad way that led to absolutely nothing worth it. I'd give you a trigger warning, but I can't even say some of the worst things that happen in this story. Just know that if you choose to read Identity Crisis and the stories in relation to it, you've been warned. Sue Dibney is the wife of Ralph Dibney, the elongated man in DC Comics, and after her incredibly horrific passing, Dr. Light is accused of the crime. This is because it's revealed that Light had to put it the only way I'm allowed to, attacked Sue in the past. The fact that he did this led the Justice League to okay Zatanna using her magic to give Light a mental lobotomy that wiped his mind and left him basically stupid. Batman discovered this and then they did the same thing to him so that Superman would not find out. The whole thing led to nothing and it was incredibly unnecessary. Coming in at number 10 is ADRIAN TOOMES. Kicking off this list on the very mild end, we gotta start with the MCU because, as most of you know, the film and television versions of Marvel's universe have never and likely will never go to the dark depths that their comic counterparts will. Despite that though, the actors in some of these films can really serve up a small taste of darkness that can put a chill down your spine. For example, in Spider-Man Homecoming, the main antagonist is ADRIAN TOOMES, the Vulture, played extremely and unsurprisingly well by Michael Keaton. In a really unexpected moment when Peter Parker arrives at his date Liz's house, he is greeted at the door by ADRIAN, Liz's father. ADRIAN drives the pair to their dance and TOOMES gradually figures out that Peter Parker is the Spider-Man. At the end of this car ride, TOOMES actually pulls a weapon on Peter and very calmly threatens Peter with the end of his life and those he loves if Spider-Man does not back off. It's an incredibly well acted scene and makes you feel just how serious things just got for Peter Parker. Number 9. John Walker. Fast forward a little bit later on in the MCU timeline to the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now this is after Steve Rogers has stopped being Captain America. Instead, John Walker has taken up the Captain America mantle on orders from the government. As comic fans know, John Walker is not the greatest guy around, and in the MCU, it's no different. Well, maybe a little bit more restrained. A little. In one of the most shocking and dark scenes from the show, from episode 4, after the Flag Smashers caused the passing of Walker's best friend Lamar, John chases down one of the Flag Smashers and in front of a crowd of people, he very brutally uses the shield of Captain America to bring the Flag Smasher to an end. The image of the bloody shield of Captain America is such a surprising thing to see, especially out in the MCU, and it's left everyone who saw this scene for the first time slack-jawed and lost for words. Hey guys, if you are enjoying this video so far, make sure you drop a like. One way to let us know that we are doing a good job. We very much appreciate it. Number 8. Brian Banner. Fans of The Incredible Hulk are well aware of how dark and messed up the character's past is. It's a partial reason that Bruce was able to become the Hulk in the first place. A large part of his darker past has to do with Bruce's father, Brian Banner. Brian was a less than ideal father figure. For starters, because of his job researching atomic radiation, he believed that his DNA was altered and that when Bruce was born, he was some kind of monster because of it. Brian also became jealous of how much attention Rebecca Banner gave to baby Bruce. Brian went pretty much insane, in other words. As some of you know, Brian became responsible for the passing of Rebecca Banner. On the anniversary of her funeral, Bruce was visiting her grave and Brian, recently released from the mental hospital, arrived. But Brian wasn't cured at all. He attacked Bruce, but all the years of torment had built up inside of Bruce, and in one kick, Bruce threw Brian off balance and he fell backwards, hitting his head off of the gravestone of Rebecca Banner and instantly ending his life. This moment was so haunting to Bruce that he just erased it from his own mind, convincing himself for years that his father passed due to a mugging. Number 7. Arsenal. Justice League Cry for Justice is an honestly fantastic story, but it does Red Arrow bad. In one moment, the super genius criminal Prometheus lands a right hook on Red Arrow that was so hard, Arrow's right arm detached from his shoulder. This was bad enough, but Prometheus also orchestrated the events that led to the passing of Red Arrow's daughter, Leon. After these events, he became Arsenal, got a cybernetic arm, and also fell back into a substance problem that he had. One time, under the influence of the stuff, he thought he was protecting his daughter from 5 versions of the villain Prometheus, but in reality, he was just beating up some random people in an alleyway, and his daughter was actually a no longer alive stray cat. Batman showed up to beat some sense into Arsenal, but the damage was done to both Arsenal's psyche and readers' memories. Number 6. The Woman in the Refrigerator. Green Lantern stories aren't usually known for their darkness, but in In Green Lantern Volume 3, number 54 from 1994, Kyle Rayner came home one day and found that his girlfriend, Alexandra DeWitt, had been extremely ruthlessly removed from life by the supervillain Major Force and then stuffed into their refrigerator. Kyle, sufficiently motivated by anger and regret, ended up stopping the bad guy, but some people have had enough. Specifically, DC writer Gail Simone. Gail, fueled by the image of seeing her favorite female character done so wrong, coined the term women in the refrigerators as a way to refer to comic book women who have been de-lifed and or had their entire lives ruined specifically in order to fuel the stories of superhero men. There are tons of other examples in comics of this happening, but this one may be the worst, hence the term. Number 5. Fall of Hal Jordan. Sticking with Green Lantern here, written by Ron Mars, the Emerald Twilight storyline did one good thing by giving us Kyle Rayner, but it did an absolutely dastardly thing by turning Hal Jordan into one of the most evil villains we've ever seen. It starts off already on the dark side when Coast City, the home of Hal Jordan, is destroyed. In complete agony over the loss, Hal tries to use his powers to remake the city and all its inhabitants. In his madness though, he goes and takes out every single one of the Green Lanterns, stealing their rings in order to try and make the whole thing a permanent stay. Now if we are going to pick one moment though, for me, the final fight with Sinestro is actually ingrained in my memory as being utterly horrible. There were no catchphrases, no jokes, no nothing, just a gritty whimper of a fight that ended with an incredibly harrowing snap. Number 4. Joker's face. In Detective Comics' Faces of Death and Batman Death of the Family, Joker had his face sliced off by the doll maker when he purposely got captured and sent to Arkham Asylum. Then he left it in his cell as a little gift for Batman and the police after he escaped. He would then go and steal it back and either staple it onto his head or strap it on as a mask, or sometimes he'd even take it off and play peekaboo with it. It's really messed up. Now the worst use of this would have to either be when he put the youngest Robin, Damian Wayne, with a bunch of dead birds and bugs and stuff and then terrified the Robin using his removed Joker face, or when he captured the entire Bat family and made them all think he had removed their faces as well. Absolutely terrifying. Number 2. Ultimatum. The Marvel Ultimate Universe. An ultimate collection of bizarre choices, really. Chief among them would have to be the event that was supposed to bring the universe to an end, but instead just did a whole bunch of really brutal stuff. And then it just kind of carries on. I'm talking about Ultimatum. In this event, Magneto, lacking any of his 616 universe counterpart's moral compass, flips the magnetic poles of the Earth. Now this causes incredibly bad weather, tidal waves, and the de-lifing of millions of people. But if that wasn't bad enough, in the ensuing chaos caused by the Ultimatum wave, the Blob devours Janet Van Dyne, Hank Pym in his giant form chomps the Blob's head off for revenge, Captain America ends up on life support, Thor trades his life and soul for Valkyries in the Land of the Dead, Magneto uses Iron Man's and Cyclops' power to brutally obliterate Wolverine, and then Magneto screams and raves until Cyclops blows his head off with an I-beam. It was all just a lot. And in at number 1 is Marvel Ruins. If you know Marvel Ruins, then you had to know that this was going to be number 1. This is a story taking place in an alternate comic book universe where literally everything that could go wrong goes wrong. Similar to Ultimatum, it's just kind of best to list off the events rather than get specific here. The Fantastic Four's spacecraft crashes into Earth and Ben Grimm is left with survivor's guilt. The Incredible Hulk is not so incredible as the gamma radiation he experienced leaves him as a hulking mass of tumors and deformity. Thanks to the radioactive spider, Spider-Man did not gain the abilities of a spider, but instead developed an incredibly brutal mutant virus that left him with a terrible skin rash and had him captured and quarantined by the government. The Scarlet Witch betrayed the Avengers to the government, leading to the Quinjet being blown up with them all inside of it. Nick Fury was introduced to the idea of eating other people by Captain America. Silver Surfer suffocated in space. Johnny Blaze sets himself on fire as a stunt and goes out in the same stunt, and Magneto's powers go out of control in an airport. The whole story just leaves you wondering what you're supposed to do with your life now.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Fantastic Four. Written by Alan Davis, we pick up on this issue 20 years after the death of Franklin and Valeria Richards. So in this 6-issue epic, we see the return of Dr. Doom, and he's got a bit of an upgrade. He's rebuilt himself after the Mutant War, and now he's more machine than anything. The Fantastic Four, of course, reunites to take down the returned Doom. Now, I have to start this at number 10 because for an end story, it feels like they're just coming back together to save the day. The stakes are high, of course, but not too high. Still a great time nonetheless. But before we go on to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and toss us a thumbs up, because it really goes a long way for us here at the studio. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Now back to some dark endings. Number 9, Doctor Strange. Written by Leah Williams, this 2020 comic marks the final days of Doctor Strange. He's older and alone. That's right, we pick up in this cyberpunk future world that just forgot about magic. He is the last true magician. Not even David Blaine is left. That's how desperate we are. So he makes the ultimate power move to restore magic to the world, going toe-to-toe with the cosmic entity, Eternity. This one-shot is amazing, and fans loved it, noting that the tone of hopelessness is carried out well throughout these pages. Even casual readers will be pleased with the way things come to a close in this emotional closing chapter. Number 8, Miles Morales. Written by Saladin Ahmed, released earlier this year, The End, Miles Morales, older and wiser, struggles to defend a post-apocalyptic Brooklyn. With this new warlord who thinks he's just this new patriotic hero, basically just a crazy, mad version of Captain America, and he plans on taking out Miles, and then of course Brooklyn will no longer have a leader, making it for easy pickin', as he says, of course. Now Miles needs to sacrifice himself to save the day, and it's quite a lot for a single one-shot, but it's a pretty fitting conclusion all in all.
Number 7, Spider-Man and Mary Jane. Spider-Man is arguably the face of Marvel Comics, and for good reason too. He's incredibly inspiring, full of hope, and is never one to give up. For all those reasons, when Spider-Man Reign was released in 2007, it was incredibly hard to see an old, tired, and torn down Peter Parker who had pretty much given up. Of all the dark and depressing things in this story, there is one thing that stands above the rest. So, through the course of the story, we learn that Mary Jane, Peter Parker's greatest love interest, has passed away, and he's been hanging on to this memory of her, and that's likely due to the fact that he is directly responsible. Mary Jane didn't pass away because of a villain or Peter failing to save her. Instead, because of the radioactive spider that gave him his abilities, Peter himself was radioactive. Through the years and years that Peter Parker and Mary Jane had been together, Peter's radioactive body had essentially given Mary Jane cancer. We learn this as Peter is hugging her decaying body and bawling his eyes out. It's honestly utterly gut-wrenching. Number 6, Green Goblin and Gwen Stacy. Sticking with Spider-Man, because apparently putting Spider-Man through the ringer is Marvel's speciality, we have Sins Past. In this story, it was revealed that Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, who was a full-grown man at the time, had actually had an affair with the teenage Spider-Man's other love interest, Gwen Stacy. Not only that, but Norman actually knocked her up with twins. Norman whisked Gwen off to France so that she could give birth, but filled with guilt, Gwen decided to come clean and tell Peter Parker everything. But Norman was absolutely not going to allow that to happen, which was the reason that the Green Goblin, who had barely ever shared any comic time with Gwen Stacy before this point, chose to infamously put her life in peril, and it's the whole reason she lost her life in the first place. It's incredibly unnecessary and completely tears down the memory of Gwen. Number 5, Sentry and Ares. The Sentry is a character that deserves more light. The problem is he is kind of the most powerful superhero Marvel has. Obviously that's debatable, but this guy has the power to destroy pretty much anybody in the Marvel universe. For example, he has reassembled his own molecules and taken out the Molecule Man. But it's the fight between the Sentry and Ares, the literal god of war, in issue 2 of Siege that really left me sitting there going, did that actually just happen? Through the course of the story, Ares has been showing just how awesome he is, and he turns his sights on Norman Osborn, which unfortunately means Ares now has to face his friend, the Sentry. Sentry punches Ares halfway across Asgard, and maybe 2 or 3 punches later, he grabs both ends of the God of War and rips him completely in half. Not only did it leave everyone on the page frozen, it also left readers completely stunned. Number 4, the Hulk and Tigra. In 1995, Marvel released The Last Avengers story, and with a title like that, from 1995, you can imagine it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Side note, the art in this comic is actually really good, which actually made it worse watching this version of the Incredible Hulk turn against his fellow Avengers, Wonder Man, Hawkeye, Mockingbird, and TIGRA. TIGRA against the Hulk is not a fight you would normally expect, and this Hulk tells you why, as in her attack against the Green Goliath, Hulk simply grabs her and pulls her apart just like Sentry did with Ares.
Number 3. Venom. Written by Adam Warren, Venom the End is a tale older than time, or something like that. See, the one-shot spans over 1 trillion years, with Venom traveling through space and time, and it starts off with the symbiote dealing with the death of Eddie Brock. Or not dealing with, rather, is I guess more appropriate. So Venom is now set on bringing back Eddie, and bonding with everybody in the universe sure is one way to try and make that happen. That's right, Venom becomes the guardian of the last organic beings in the universe. It's wild. Each page is just covered with content. It takes time to really absorb it all, because it's a pretty wild ending, and it's beautifully drawn as well. Cruz delivers these epically detailed space battles that complement one of the best Venom stories ever created. Straight up. Number 2. Deadpool. Written of course by Joe Kelly, we have the final Deadpool story, which is shocking because Wade's known for cheating death more than a few times. See, this issue deals with a lot of Deadpool's past. It's quite enjoyable. They touch on his relationship with Death, touch on his daughter, his ex-wife Shikla, and then all the while there's some brutal killings just to make it fun, which looks better than ever with Mike Hawthorne bringing those pages to life. Part of this issue shows Deadpool squaring off against an Asgardian Gundam Deadpool, so we got some cosmic elements sprinkled in nicely. Now of course the issue has a lot of heart, because while being immortal, Deadpool has to watch his loved ones age off and die. And he wants to be with them again eventually. Now it's not just one ending in this issue either, there's multiple endings, which is just so fun, each totally different than the other. Some endings are like these Hollywood endings, some are happy, some are sad, some are scary, and on top of all that goodness, we see Blind Al dressed as the Black Widow. So if you're not sold by now, I don't know what else to tell you. And finally coming in at number 1, we have Hulk the End. Written by Peter David, released in 2002, Hulk the End is a one-shot that takes place in a world where nobody is left but Bruce Banner and the Hulk. So in a world probably resembling our near future, following a war that ended in, you guessed it, nuclear fallout, the issue starts with Banner vlogging. Yeah, he's accompanied by a vidbot, which is a floating camera that always hovers 10 feet away from him, keeping that social distance, I like it. And it's basically assigned to confirm and record the fate of the final human on Earth. Banner doesn't mind it at all, but the Hulk, he hates it. God, that would be so annoying too. I feel like TMZ is gonna have these soon, just following you around like, Matthew Perry, what's going on? So Banner just absorbs all this nuclear energy, and now he walks about the wastelands that he once called home. Totally alone though. No, God no. I mean, he has these giant mutated cockroaches to keep him company, which is beautiful and also so disgusting. They look very moist the way they're drawn. And it's a really dark and cold ending for Bruce, literally. I mean, the Hulk just wants to be the biggest, baddest creature ever on the planet, and Banner, he wants to die. He's ready to die. The ending is wild here. I mean, Bruce suffers a heart attack, but the Hulk still remains. So if the Hulk were to transform back into Banner, he would also die, which is a no deal. So with the last words of the Hulk reading, Hulk, strongest one there is, Hulk, only one there is, Hulk feels cold. Wow, I guess we all feel kind of cold after that one. Thank you, Hulk, for making our heart go,